What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Newstrength Way Podcast. I'm here with our coach and newly strongman, strongwoman extraordinaire, Annaliese. So Annaliese has just been through the last few months of big competitions in strongman, going from starting out in the novice that we spoke about on the last time that she was on the show. So if you haven't checked that one out, make sure to jump on that first. And then has stepped it all the way up to Arnold's qualifiers. If you're not really sure about the strongman, like the Arnold's is kind of like it's where the big dogs play. So it's like the NRL of strongman within Australia. And Annaliese was fortunate enough to win her division and qualify for the Arnold's coming up next year in March. So I'm excited to get her on the show again and talk about the last 6 months of her training, what she's been doing, some of the changes that she's made, and then how that's impacted on her performance and becoming a strong woman gun, pretty much. So welcome to the show, Bev.
Hello, I'm back again. This is like episode 3.
Dude, that makes you the highest, most repeated episodes besides Nate, because Nate's basically like a guest host now.
Oh, yes.
Seeing as though he doesn't jump in anymore. But I'm sure we can overtake him over the next couple of months. But let's start off with, I guess, you want to talk us through the last couple of months with training and more specifically going into the strongman stuff. You've had 4 competitions now?
Yeah, 4 in strongman,
Yeah,
yes.
4 in strongman over the last few months and came out podium on each one. Only 1 second, the rest of them have been first. Little fly that's bugging us around now.
Yeah.
If you're watching the video, you'll see us like karate chopping it and stuff. But yeah, start us off with how that journey's been going, what you've found, and we'll just see where it takes us.
Well, the first strongman comp I did was a Lake Mac one, and I sort of only really jumped in on that because Jacob told me that I should, and I was like, oh, okay. So I think I only really started preparing for that like 2 weeks prior. And then, so that was like 6 months ago, and then I did our novice comp.
Cleaned up, kept us with the trophy for Newstrength.
Yes.
Representing.
Somehow that was a stacked competition. It was really good though. It's good to like be against some like really strong girls in strongman. That's been really good the last few months to see that.
Yeah, like if you look at that, like now you've got within that division there, you had quite a few girls that have been competitive in powerlifting, in CrossFit. Mel Green obviously is Australian record deadlift holder in 2 sports, in both powerlifting and strongwoman now. So
yeah.
It wasn't like you had the normal novice comp of everyone's first time. You had quite a few weapons and still came out on top.
Yeah, which I'm still surprised every time. And then the last 2 months have been the bigger comp. So I did the New South Wales qualifier out in Singleton, the Might of Zeus, which I competed in the under 65 weight class this time. So that was my first time competing in the lightweight ones.
Yeah, the first time cutting weight the week of as well.
Yes.
That's an experience I'm sure that we'll talk about.
And then just this weekend gone competing in the Arnold's qualifier in Penrith, again, but this time in the under 64 category. And both the last 2 have been are they like a division 2? They're a little bit higher than the novice ones?
They're above the novice. It's kind of like there's not really like a very clean, nobody kind of tells you what it is, but they're different. Whatever they qualify you for attracts different levels of athletes towards it, and it gets heavier as well, which is the other thing that we noticed. But yeah, that's all been super cool. And like of the last 3 comps, you came out with the trophy.
Yeah.
So you've been stacking up the trophy cabinet at home.
Yeah. Yes, actually, which is weird. Like I have dance trophies, but I don't have any first place trophies. Well, I do now.
Well, now you have 3, right?
Yeah. Yes.
That's super cool. And let's talk about like what's obviously we talked about last time that you're on that you've been competing in like CrossFit for a while now. Obviously, that's like a very it's very heavy, but relatively it's a lot more cardiovascular dominant, a lot more like gasses you out more so than it being heavy and challenging. And moving into strongman, it's a little bit more heavy dominant or strength dominant stuff. There's still a little bit of conditioning involved in it, but not to the same degree. How did your training change over that time? Because obviously you've had to make changes to be able to excel in the new sport, right?
Yeah, so I went on placement for 4 weeks at the end of October. So that meant that I didn't do CrossFit for 4 weeks. So I just did strength training on a program that Jacob wrote for me.
Shameless plug for Newstrength there.
Shameless plug. So I just trained at a few different gyms that I was away. And so I trained 4 days a week, which is different for me because I used to train 5 to 6 days a week at CrossFit.
A lot of cardio.
Lots of cardio. So going from doing a lot of cardio just all the time to then doing just strength training and then like event training was very different for me. But it definitely made such a difference to my strength. So like each week I was adding more and more weight, which it's like, oh, crazy, you get stronger doing strength training.
We joke about that all the time, don't we?
Yeah, and like while I love CrossFit, I think it was having that time to recover, my body to recover, not doing the cardio every day also made a difference to my strength training because I wasn't as fatigued from doing so much conditioning all the time or just high reps or just running myself into the ground. So it was quite a pleasant change, but it definitely made such a difference to my strength training for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Like obviously in that time you've come on to there was a max deadlift event at the Mitre Zeus.
Yeah.
You hit a 10 kilo PR on that one.
Yeah, which is crazy.
Yeah, and that was on like steel plates instead of bumpers, which don't have as much flex and all those little things that actually make it like a little bit harder than what you would normally see as well. What else was there that's gone up? Your log press, like you were one of only 2 women to make the 60 kilo log in the competition on the weekend, which is pretty huge. And for anyone that's only done, I guess, a barbell clean and press or anything that's a little bit more similar like that, and thinking, 60 kilo clean and press isn't too bad. The log is its own little devil, isn't it? It's very, very different.
Yes.
It doesn't kind of want to sit where you want to sit it. It doesn't push the way, like drive out of your legs the same way. So it's definitely its own demon to battle with. And 60 kilos for the small time you've been doing it was quite impressive. And I think that was seen by a lot of the girls across the division, considering that there was, out of 6 girls, there was only one other girl that completed that one for you there. And then you came through and you absolutely blitzed it and threw it through the roof, which was pretty cool.
That was crazy. I watched back the video and I was like, oh, that looks very easy. But at the time I was like, this is not gonna happen. Like before I did that event, the guy running it asked me if I wanted to change the height of the Viking press or something, and I was like, oh no, like I gotta get through the log and I don't know if I'll get that. And then I ended up getting it, which was such a shock. Like probably in the video my face is like, what? That just happened?
That was definitely a pretty cool moment of the event to see the whole crowd, after so many people had struggled on there, all got up behind you to support as soon as they'd seen that log had actually got locked out overhead. That was very, very cool, and particularly that I think you went in expecting your strength to not quite be there. Like you hadn't hit it in training before, so it was a PR on the day.
Yeah.
You'd had quite a hard weight cut the week of. How many kilos was it the week?
I think I started 68, so it would have been near 4 or 5 kilos.
Yeah, and you had to basically get down to bare undies to weigh in to get underweight.
Oh yeah.
Which for the guys that haven't seen Strongman or much of the strength sports, you have a weight class that you compete in, and you have to generally the day before or the day of weigh in just under that weight, so 0.9, so under 64 is 63.9. You stepped on the scales at like 64.1 the first time, is that right?
Yeah.
And then you had to like take off as much clothing as you could to get yourself down.
Yeah.
What was that like? Was that scary for you?
To be honest, I was so tired and dehydrated. I was like, I don't care. It was also a little bit like, I'm sure he's this weighing guy's seen boobs before, it's fine.
That's going to be the headline of the show. I'm sure the guy's seen boobs before.
Or what was more worrying was the fact that, like, what if I took off everything and I was still over? Then I was in trouble, but it was alright. I had one item of clothing on and I was under, so I was glad, because I was like, I've put in so much work for this stupid weight cut and like lost so much weight in the last 6 months. If I don't make weight, I'm just gonna cry.
But you made it, and that's all that matters there. So let's talk a little bit more on, obviously, like, we work towards doing a little bit more strength focused training for you, obviously practicing the events and that sort of stuff that was coming up so you could be as best prepared as possible. You still did a little bit of CrossFit stuff in that time. How did you feel like doing the strength focused training, and you were still touching a little bit of that, helped carry over to how you've been going in your CrossFit stuff in the same time?
Yeah, so I was doing the CrossFit Open at the same time I was on placement, and then have come back and been doing CrossFit in between competing. And it's helped a lot because I have so much more, I suppose it's muscular endurance, or just I'm able to hold on to weights for so much longer, and my grip strength is a lot better, my pressing strength is better, and also just my strict strength. So I sort of had a little bit of trouble with my shoulders before, but now having focused so much on the pressing and on my rotator cuff muscles, doing the CrossFit stuff like your kipping and the handstand push-ups, it feels so much better now that I have that overhead strength in the strict position and like just control of my scapula. So I've noticed that a lot. And then like I thought I was going to die because I hadn't done CrossFit properly for 4 weeks, and when I came back it was actually like I still had that cardiovascular endurance, but what really helped me was that like the weights weren't hard anymore, like the RX weights weren't that hard anymore. It was just that my cardiovascular system needed to catch up with that.
Yeah, for sure. And so is that something that you feel like would help a lot of people out, that if their focus is on developing conditioning work or whatever that might be, CrossFit, putting a bit more focus towards the strength side of stuff every now and then might be something that you would carry on or advise for a lot of people in that space?
Oh, for sure, definitely. Because if the weights are easy for you in a workout, then it doesn't become limited by your strength or that muscular fatigue. It becomes more about the conditioning or maybe a different skill set, or gymnastic skills, for instance. So I definitely think it's very advantageous for CrossFit to be spending that time slowing down and doing the strength training, especially the eccentric work made a difference for me.
Yeah, cool. Was there any of those particular movements that you think, like you said, a lot of the more eccentric focus work, any movements that you think would be great bang for their buck for people competing in CrossFit to incorporate in their own training?
I definitely found snatch group deadlifts helped me a lot with my upper back strength and my deadlift, and doing those with a reset, and then just rowing, like single arm row, spending more time on the posterior on your back muscles made a difference, and like back extensions as well. Like pretty much for me, mostly posterior movements is what I was missing, I think.
Yeah.
So that made a big difference for me.
Awesome, cool. And let's touch on a little bit of, we've spoken about it a fair bit, but the idea of like mental training, mental approach to the actual competition days. Like, tell us about like maybe where you feel you were at in that stage, maybe 6 to 12 months ago.
I think it's very different to where I am now, and I'm still on a journey with that. But CrossFit, when I was competing in those, I never really had any pressure on me because it was just like, I didn't expect to win. I wasn't at that high end because I'm just years behind people, and there's so many people who are very good at CrossFit, and I have a long way to go with that. But when I started competing in Strongman, especially that first comp, I had a few moments of like panic, I guess, because suddenly there's this new pressure of like, oh, I'm like up there at the top, like I've got to try and hang on to the win. And in that first comp, I had a moment of panic and didn't pick up the stone, which seems to be a common trend because that also happened at New South Wales.
Not last time though.
Not last time though,
So let's touch on that for a second. And like, I think one of the things that does pop up in Strongman a little bit more than CrossFit is because it is so quick paced. Like most of your events are less than a minute.
yes.
That you're trying to get it done so quickly, and there isn't much room for error. Like the first event with yourself and Grace on the weekend just passed, you guys were neck and neck the whole way through, and you did finish first and second in that event, but there was less than half a second difference between you two. And I think that's how fine it can be in Strongman, which puts that pressure up to perform at a high speed and really not make those mistakes. But when you have the pressure up that high, it sometimes can force your hand into accidentally making little errors and little mistakes, as we all experience there. So let's keep rolling on with that. And like, how did you respond to that initially when you were going through those cases?
Initially, I would be very disappointed in myself. Anyone who knows me knows that I have very harsh internal critic, and I hold some very high expectations for myself, which can, I think it's good to hold yourself to high standards, but not to the extremity that sometimes I do. So after that first comp, the next one, it was our comp, and I just said to myself, I just want to try and stay in a good headspace the whole day. And I think there was one event I messed up because I just sort of didn't get my implement over the line, and then I was beating myself up for a while, and then I was like, you know what, like, it doesn't matter, like, this is just a novice comp, this isn't like the CrossFit Games, it's fine. So then managed to go right after that. The New South Wales
That was the first event, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was the first one. So, and
I think sometimes the thing that might have helped you out in that case there was it was the first one, so you had all day to sort of claw your way back. And like by the last event, you were in the lead going into the final there. With you basically knew what you had to do and you had to get it done to win. And you actually came out pretty strongly to finish that up. So I think that was a pretty good indication of how far your mental game has come along on that day there.
Yes.
Then going to the Mitre Zeus, you had a couple of strong events to start the day off. We got to the stone. There wasn't a warm-up stone there for you to work with, and it was up to you to go first. You want to run us through how that happened, like what happened there? What was your headspace like leading into that event? What was your headspace like afterwards?
I think that because I knew the events before I was placing well, there was this sense of like, oh, I've got to do really well because like if I don't win this event, then I'm going to lose my spot and I'm not going to place. And like, so going into the stones, I was the first person to go as well, which I think when you can watch someone else do it, you feel a little bit better because you're like, oh, they've done it, like I can do it. So I went in and tried to pick up the stone, it didn't move, and then in my head it just started to spiral, so it went from being like, why isn't it moving, to then like, oh, I'm not strong enough, like I've done this a million times, why can't I do this? And then next thing you know, 30 seconds is up and like you've just had this massive spiral in your head. And once that started happening, there was no way I was going to pick it up after that. So afterwards, I was really disappointed in myself again. Did have a bit of like a cry, a bit of panic attack. There's a couple of tears there. That was okay though. Like... Which it wasn't because I was like, oh, I've lost. It was like because I was just disappointed that like I'd done it in training so many times and didn't get it, and then I was also disappointed in myself for beating myself up as well. Yeah,
for sure. And then you went from that. You came back quite strong in the truck pull to take the win out on that event, which was another cool thing of like, I think the difference that I've found looking at you in the competitive space from where you were maybe that 6 to 12 months ago to now is like you don't let as much of those bad events hang on to, for much longer. Like you're better at going, okay, yes, I'm upset, I'm disappointed, and let's move on to the next one and just focus on doing well in that. Versus letting that one event impact the rest of your day. So I think that's one of the big improvements that I've noticed from you, and then turn around to the comp on the weekend just gone, and it was like I've been saying to you for a while is we need to bring out like the killer instinct Bev that's like once you start getting a bit of momentum, you start rolling forward, it's just let's just keep the pressure on everyone else instead of on you. And that was super cool, and I think that was the first time that we started to see that come out, and I think that was a really important day in your development as from a mental perspective as an athlete. And how did that day feel differently to say some of the other ones?
I think the expectations of myself at the start of the day were not as high to start with, so I just said to myself that I knew this was going to be the next level of competitive, so I wasn't like expecting to win. Like I never really expect to win like any of the comps I've done, but I just was like, it's alright, like if I come last, you know what, I was here and I did a qualifier, and in 12-month time I could come back and do really well. So first off, it was that I just said to myself I wanted to pick up the 70 kilo stone this time, and then just everything else, just try my best. So when we did the frame carry, like I knew I could do that. I just had to reassure myself throughout the day that like I'd done a lot of this before, and just stay calm as well. So not just get super nervous the whole day. Like I saw you, and most of the day you were calm, and I would just be like, okay, I got to be calm like Jacob because he wins, so he knows what he's doing. And then when we did, there was one bad event for me, which was the sandbag throw. But and I'd spoken to Jacob before, and we just said like, you know, this isn't something we've trained for that much, so we can't really expect to go super well. And I was already like ahead at that time, but I tried not to think too much about that, because as soon as I started thinking about the fact that I was in the lead, and that if I didn't place well I might lose that would send me into a panic. So I just sort of would tell myself, okay, we're just going to go in there and just think about throwing that sandbag over and then moving to the next one. And I tried, like when I threw the first one I went too quick, and I was like, you know what, I need to calm down and take it back and do it properly and not waste time panicking and doing bad throws.
Yeah, and that was your only not bad finish for the day, but everything else was a second or a first, right? Three first place finishes in the end, 1 second, and then that was I think fourth. So you had a pretty dominant day in the first time jumping into a qualifier for the biggest competition in the country, basically, which is super cool to watch. Going into that stone, how did you feel? That because the last event was max rep stones in a minute at the weight that 2 weeks prior to that had stayed sitting on the ground and didn't want to play ball with you at all. Stone pun, ball, intentional. But yeah, like tell me about that space for you, because I think that was an interesting spot. Both yourself and Grace were pretty well in good positions coming into the last event. I think you basically just had to seal it with a good solid finish. You didn't have to play super high, but you just needed to get a couple of points on the board to lock in the win. And how did you go? How was your headspace coming into that?
I was very nervous. So that was probably the most nervous I felt the whole day, because I just really wanted to get like one rep on the stone. And we'd done it the week prior, and I was like, yep, like I've done it before. I know that this stone is pretty much the same, like the same make. And I just started to think about the process of how I was going to pick up the stone. So I stopped thinking like, oh my god, I got to pick it up, oh my gosh, I got to win, like I need to place whatever. And I just started thinking, okay, like feet either side of the stone, hands underneath, squeeze it. Just started to talk myself through the steps on how to pick it up, rather than thinking like about the next thing to do. So it was like, okay, this movement, then that one, then bring it over, and then we do it again. And yeah, that worked for me, because I was just thinking about one thing at a time, which was just picking up the stone. It wasn't about like how many reps I needed to get, or like how much time I had left. I just kept thinking about the next one and then the next one, and just keep going until they told me to stop.
Yeah, cool. And I think the other thing that was probably pretty integral there. Is like obviously they had stones for you to warm up on, which gave you like, we've kind of got you a routine now of like the event that's given you a little bit of trouble in the past, is like we now have a process that how we go about that from the start of practicing the drills, and you and I follow the same one with that, as like practicing picking the stone in your RDL and squeezing it tight, and then working into like the one motion stones, working into your lap and then drive. And I think that's probably a really key thing for a lot of people, as well as like if there is something that you do struggle with, or you have this tendency to struggle with, then coming up with ways to simplify that process and make it feel a little bit more comfortable, a little bit more at home, whether that's your warm-up or whether that's the way that you think about it in your head. I think that's a huge thing as well that people can get a lot of value from. Like stones for me has also been one of those events that I tend to either do really well or I do terribly at. And in the last few months, particularly thanks to Big Coco, Australia's strongest man, when I did a session with him learning how to do stones up at the Gold Coast, he showed me through his way of, he's like, this is how I want you to do it. This is how he basically taught me step by step to go through, and that had me, I hit basically a PR on that day, and I was like, I'm just gonna follow this all the time. So then step by step I just follow that same process, and my stones have gotten a lot more consistent since that session, just because I've just been doing the exact same warm-up drills to build myself up. So I think that's a huge thing for a lot of people as well. If there is that one thing, finding a way to simplify it can be a really, really great way to build your way into getting more consistency there. Obviously we've got the Arnolds coming up soon. What are you most excited for with that?
I don't know. I'm excited to like put in the work and just challenge myself. Like I do love training, and it'll just be fun to, I'm not expecting anything big, like my aim is to just not zero every single event. I'd love to be able to pick up a heavy stone. I think that would be really cool. I'm excited just to go to the Arnolds. I've never been, but to be around like other strong women is going to be really cool, I think.
That's cool, Bev. That's I think it's going to be awesome having our full, like the team, myself, yourself and Grace all competing over the weekend. So I'm really looking forward to that, and we've put together the plan, so it's all just actioning it from now, and that's going to be super cool. We've got like about a minute left on this, Bev. Is there anything that you want to wrap up with, of like any advice for things that you've taken away in the last 6 months in your training, the mental space, the nutrition side of things, that you want to touch on before we finish the podcast?
I think it's
anything you could like maybe simply give a couple of words of advice to other people there.
It's okay to make mistakes, and you don't have to be perfect all the time.
I love it. Nice and simple. So anyone that wants to watch Bev's road to the Arnold's journey, make sure you follow her on Annaliese_Bevan. Is it on Instagram? Yep. Sweet, nice and simple. And then we'll be recording a lot of it ourselves and keeping track of it. So make sure you follow the Newstrength page. We'll be sharing a lot of it as much as we can the whole way through. And that's pretty much it. Thanks so much for listening, guys. If you've enjoyed this one, make sure you follow us or subscribe on iTunes and share it with a friend. Would be awesome. We'll see you next time.